Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. Before I start, I want to say hello to all my new subscribers. I got a lot of new subscribers. That's great. And I want to say thank you for subscribing. And I want to thank all of my old subscribers as well for being here all the time. Now, today I'm going to talk about Marvel Comics becoming anime. And anime is something I really want to talk a little bit more about on my channel just because I've been into it for quite a while. You know, when I rage quit comics, that's kind of where I went to get my visual stories. You know, so you may be saying first off, what don't you mean that Marvel Comics are going to become manga? And I would say no, I'll call it anime instead, not manga, because there's a strange thing that happens, I'd say, when you compare sort of North American cartoons and comics with manga and anime. It's that I think there's a sort of like a crisscross, because in North American comics, at the very least traditionally, and I would say up until very recently, it's been very realistic. You know, you didn't have this 3D kind of, you know, people copying pictures and stuff like that they have right now from computers. That's kind of garbage if you ask me. But it's been very realistic. Even though it's always been a drawing, it's always been realistic. And when you get to cartoons, of course, it's cartoony. You know, you have things in cartoons where people's legs go around in a circle when they're running, or steam comes out of their ears, or you have this shot where it looks like it's done from a fisheye lens, right? Stuff like that. Cartoonish looking. But comics have always been very, very realistic in the way that they draw things. I do believe. Even when you have somebody with a very distinct style, still the style is not something that gets broken from one panel to another. I mean, it stays the same. But I would say, and maybe this is just me, maybe this is just the anime and the manga that I've been exposed to, but I would say it's the opposite in anime and manga. I would say that, at the very least, certainly from the stuff back in the 80s when I used to see it, certainly that stuff for anime was gritty, realistic, right? There was no cartoony stuff in that. And then this cartoony stuff started to come in more and more, but I think it's starting to fade more and more now, and partly because of the new digital technology, you know, with your cartoons being done by computer. I mean, it's not something that really fits in with that kind of visual. So I don't think it's always been there, the cartoony kind of feel that's in some anime, and I think it's starting to fade. It's still there a little bit, but I think in the manga, it actually is there a lot more. Now, again, you can argue certainly there are plenty of manga that don't have any kind of cartoony in them whatsoever, but I would say that it is much easier to put that cartoony element into the manga, especially since you got somebody drawing it, right? You know, and you have things, they're more of Japanese kinds of things where, like when someone's waving their arms up and down and you can barely see them, they're just a blur, right? Or, you know, someone sees something lewd and they get a nosebleed that pushes them backwards. Or, you know, somebody turning pale white and just becoming a blank face. Stuff like that. I'd say you see that more in the manga than you do in the anime. And that's why I think I would say that even though I'm talking about Marvel Comics becoming manga, I will say Marvel Comics becoming anime, because they're becoming manga in an anime style, I would say, in a more realistic style. And that's why I'll just say anime from now on. But the thing is that if you've been around my channel, you know that I like to talk about things which no one else seems to be focusing on. And I think that this is a really distinct possibility for Marvel Comics. Not just for Marvel Comics, but I would say for other comics as well. But I would say it's very distinct possibility for Marvel. Why? Well, there's a number of reasons I think that this is going to happen. It's because that, well, first of all, let's go back, take a step backward, and just look at Disney themselves, okay? Now, if you follow Clownfish, and I know some of my subscribers follow Clownfish, you know, especially my older subscribers. I'm looking at you, Lady Hawk and Neostar. I see you in those live streams, right? If you follow Clownfish, you know that he used to work for Disney Comics, not Marvel Comics, Disney Comics. So, and he's a comic nerd, so he has some good insights into what might be happening. And one of the insights he's been talking about recently is the fact that Disney is really feeling a pinch right now. And when you got a giant company like Disney and they're feeling the pinch, that means a lot of money going. And it's been happening because they've been making some major purchases, like Fantastic Four and X-Men back, right? These are massive purchases. And at the same time, they've been having these massive flops with the Star Wars movies and things like that. So what they're doing to try to supplement all these losses is to push up the money from their cash cows, which are their theme parks. So they're putting up all of the rates on their theme parks, and they're starting to charge for things that they didn't usually used to charge for. So it's showing that they're trying to get more money out of that because they're losing money in other places. And at the same time, he says that you can see them, he thinks, at the very least, he believes this is a trend that is starting, that when they do that, they also start to look really closely at parts of their company, the smaller parts of their companies, that aren't making money and that aren't doing well. And if any part of their company isn't doing well and isn't making money, it's Marvel Comics. So, in his estimation, one of two things is going to happen. One, either Marvel Comics is going to be shut down completely, or two, it's going to be farmed out to somebody like IDW, which has already started happening because we now have Miles Morales Spider-Man comics in IDW. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think that's going to be the case at all. I would say it has a little bit of truth to it, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Why? Well, because if they look at Marvel Comics and say, this is not working, right? We'll say, you people here, I don't care if you're SJWs or not, but you're not producing a good enough product. You're not making us money. You got to start making us money. I would say if they look at them and ask them to revamp everything so that they can make money, it's not going to happen. But at the same time, if they farm it out to somebody like an IDW or a Boom or a Black Mask or a Dynamite or what, Dark Horse, they're in the same boat. They're all SJW infested. None of these companies are merit-based anymore. None of these American companies are merit-based anymore. So they're just moving the problem away from them by one step. It's still a problem. It's still not going to work. And I mean, Hasbro's been finding this out in the last little while. What's happening with G.I. Joe, you know? They've been telling their comic producers, you're producing garbage. You're ruining our brand. Stop doing that. So if they farm it out to these smaller companies, they're going to have the same problem. It's going to be a little farther away from them, but it's still going to be the same problem. So I don't think that's a solution. I certainly don't think that's a solution at all. So where is the solution? Well, I think the solution is in something else that I've been following lately. And it's the fact that I've been looking at Marvel Rising. And Marvel Rising is something which is multi-platform. And Marvel's been working on for almost 3 years now. And they're putting a lot of money into this. And this is Marvel Entertainment. Marvel Entertainment deals with everything besides the movies, basically. And so it deals with the comics as well. And they've been working on this for a while. They've been backing this and planning it for quite a while. It has a comic, it has shorts on the internet, it has a movie now, and now they're starting to put out shows. They're basically what they call 22-minute shorts, but again, 22 minutes of a cartoon is a normal show on television. You take out the commercials and you get 22 minutes, right? So they think that this is going to save them to some extent. And they're putting a lot of money into it and a lot of backing into it, even though people aren't responding to it very well. But they've been planning to put a lot into this for the last 2 years. So this is something they really want to do well. And one of the things that they really wanted to do well with it is they want to bring in girls. They've specifically said this. They want to bring in girls. They think, yeah, boys, great. We got them caught. But we need to draw in the girls. This is what they've said Marvel Rising is for. And so in order to bring in the girls, they wanted to make sure, because the major part of it is the animation, is the cartoons, is the movie, and then the shows that are coming out after it. They wanted to make sure that these cartoons appealed to girls. And what they found was that the girls wanted, and I'm not joking when I say this, the girls wanted pretty hair. They wanted the girls to look like they had pretty hair. And they wanted to see facial expressions that really express their emotions. That's what they wanted, according to their research. That's what girls would want in these cartoons. But traditionally, their cartoons didn't do that. And so they focused on boys, and it was all about action. They didn't care about facial expressions in order to present emotion. So they said, well, we really have to focus on this subtle part of this emotion, and we want to make sure that it gets out there so that it appeals to the girls. So how do we do that? Well, we got to have a really good animation studio to do it. Now, I got to say, right off the bat, everybody seems to think that the comic industry, like Disney's Marvel and Time Warner's DC and all of these comic companies, are the problem child of these giant media companies. They are not. Trust me, they are not. If anything, they're like the emo child, right? The problem child, the real problem child, the child that, is a juvenile delinquent and starts setting houses on fire, that problem child is animation, is North American animation. The comic companies like Marvel, they look like the poster child of normalcy compared to the animation studios in North America right now. You just go look on YouTube for some of these things, because they are just bonkers nuts stuff going on in these companies, and they're trying to hide it every way they can. So the animation studios in North America are really, really not producing anything of value, and they're just so messed up that it's not even funny. So guess what Marvel, who is owned by Disney, wanted to do in order to make sure that this cartoon that they're putting out for Marvel Rising was something that had high quality, and made sure that this part of the high quality, which was the facial expressions and the hair and all these girly kind of things, well, they wanted to give it to a good animation studio so that it produced a good product, so that they could get a good product, and this horse that they're trying to back would actually draw in more customers. So where did they go to get this animation done? They went to Japan. Quite literally, a subsidiary of Disney, in order to get their animation done, went to Japan. And, I don't know how much of their animation is being done in Japan, but I do know that Marvel Rising specifically is. And they went there so that they could get this higher quality. So if they're doing that with their animation, because in Japan, of course, your anime and your manga and your cartoons, your animation studios, they run a tight ship over there. I mean, that is a merit-based system, and their editors are just in the face of their artists saying, this is not good enough, redo the entire thing. And you got to be pretty dedicated and pretty skilled in order to make sure that you are successful in that market. So no wonder they're going over there for trying to get anything of value, for anything of merit, making sure they get a good product. That's where they're going. So I would say that when Marvel starts to be looked at by Disney because they're having hard times, and they say to them, shape up or ship out, they're not going to try to revamp their entire industry. They can't farm it out to anybody else in North America because, of course, they have the same problem there. And they're not going to just start from scratch and restructure their entire company, because that's just, why would they do that? That's too much resources. When they have separate companies that they can farm it out to that do produce products of merit, they're just on the other side of the world. They're in Japan. Now, some of them might be in China, Korea, India even, maybe, because you got some kinds of, we'll say, anime and manga. They're not quite, but in these other places. But I would say the majority would be Japan. So I think that that's what's going to happen to Marvel Comics. Yes, at some point, they're going to stop publishing them, in the sense that they're going to take all of their work, because they're going to look at Marvel and say, this isn't working, everything is corrupted in it. Even if we give it to anybody else in North America, it's still going to be corrupted. Let's give it to Japan. And the sad thing is that North American comics are no longer going to be done in North America. They're going to be done in Japan. Now, they're going to give them art direction and story direction and say, here, you take it. Because traditionally, things like comic companies, things like animation companies, certainly that work over in Japan, they require a lot of direction. It's not like over here. That's part of the problem over here. They're giving them too much leeway to do anything that they want. And they throw in stuff that shouldn't be there. But over there, no, they have to give them a lot of direction. So there'll still be a lot of direction. There'll be some directors over here, storyboarding things and coming up with ideas and stories and say, this is the story that we want. And they got to make sure, bing, bang, boom, everything is in it and everything is done. So the people over there that are going to be producing these comics, if this happens, they're not going to be artists, not in any way. They're just the guy who sits at his desk and draws pictures. They're going to be the guy who sits at his desk and produces a story as he is told to do so. There's no art in that. I don't know whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe it is a good thing. But I would say that this is the distinct possibility because, again, why would they restructure an entire industry? Why would they farm it out to somebody in North America that has the same industry problems as they do? Why would they not just take the entire industry, give it to another part of the world where the industry is healthy and works really well and is already set up and can work with them and is used to working with them? All they got to tell them at the first is, make this look a little bit American. They can do that. Well, that's what's going to happen. I really see this as a distinct possibility of what is going to happen to Marvel Comics in the future. And of course, it'll start by looking American, and then more and more manga, anime kind of tropes will seep into it over time. And again, whether or not you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But I would say that's what will happen. And it'll just become like manga, like anime. And it'll be in a floppy. I'm sure they'll probably start putting out the smaller books. But that's what's going to happen. I would see that happening in the future more than any of these other possibilities that have been shooting around. What's going to happen to Marvel. And I would even say DC Comics after that. Anyways, tell me what you think of my idea. Tell me, first of all, whether you think that it's even a possibility in your mind. And then after that, tell me whether or not you think this would be a good thing or not. I think it's a sad thing that American heroes and American comics would no longer be produced in America, North America anyways. But you tell me, what do you think about it? Anyways, if I've given you anything new to think about, hit like, hit the shield in the lower right hand corner of your screen to subscribe, and leave me a message. Give me something new to think about. Alright, I'll see you later. Bye.